This hearing will come to order. I want to welcome our Comptroller General of the United States Government, Mr. Eugene, the Honorable Eugene Dodaro. Thank you for all your good work. Mentioned earlier, this is kind of like your second home, your second office. We certainly appreciate all the good work you and your agency provides this committee and the Congress. I do have an opening statement, which I'll, with unanimous consent, offer to enter the record.
Okay.
Because we do want to make sure that this hearing is over no later than 10:25. We have a briefing with Secretary Kerry on some relatively important matters as well. So I just want to say this is, I think, a very important subject. This particular report has now been, you've been doing these things for 5 years. This is your 5th year. You've identified 440 different areas of duplication, already saved $20 billion. There's $80 billion more to be saved over the next 8 or 9 years. This is an area that we need to explore, figure out exactly how to implement more of these. Apparently only about 37% of these recommendations have been implemented. So that's certainly what this committee wants to explore, but really interested in hearing what you found out in 2015. And with that, I'll turn it over to our ranking member, Senator Carper. Thanks, Senator Carper. I also want to certainly pay tribute to Senator Tom Coburn. Oftentimes we tack on amendments on a piece of legislation and take votes on them. They're messaging votes. This was far more than that. This was an amendment passed on a debt ceiling increase in 2010 that has had a real impact. I mean, provided us excellent information and provided real savings, billions, tens of billions of dollars of savings. So again, this hearing really is a tribute to Senator Tom Coburn. We were hoping to have him as a witness here today, but we're obviously happy to have you, Mr. Dodaro. So it is the tradition of this committee to swear in witnesses. So if you'll stand, raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony you will give before this committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. Thank you. Well, thank you, Mr. Dodaro. I have 3 specific questions on some of the areas of duplication, fragmentation you talked about. Let me go right to the last one you mentioned, the duplicate payments of disability payments versus unemployment. Now, in normal state unemployment systems, you simply cannot collect unemployment if you're disabled, if you're not available for work. Is that correct?
That's correct. But in a lot of the disability programs, the goal is for those people who can be rehabilitated and get back to work, they can get back to work. And there's some rules about, they can work for a certain limited period of time so they could get off the disabled rolls. And so some people end up in having employment status even though they're receiving disability payments, and this is where this gap can occur.
Okay, but again, this is an unintended
Yes.
overlap. This isn't something that was contemplated in legislation. This is an unintended consequence.
That's exactly right, Senator, Mr. Chairman, and we think it could be easily rectified through legislation without unduly affecting anyone, and CBO estimates about $1.2 billion that could be saved.
Greater savings.
Yes.
Well, again, a billion here, a billion there, you end up with real money, right?
Right.
In terms of cancer outpatient, are you basically saying because when this program was first set up, it incentivized payment for inpatient cancer treatment versus now the market has moved toward outpatient, which is more cost effective? Is that the discrepancy there?
Yes. I mean, when the system was set up, and this was set up in the 1980s, there was concern as Medicare moved to a prospective payment system where they would pay the fee for service that it wouldn't sufficiently cover the cost of inpatient cancer care. And now that's changed a lot. And so these hospitals get reimbursed for their full cost as opposed to negotiated payments for both inpatient and outpatient care. Medicare's CMS has reformed their payment process to take into account more recent and contemporary cancer treatments. And so if everybody's treated on a level playing field, you could save $500 million a year.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about the Department of Defense family health system. I know in the private sector it's not unusual where you have a husband and wife working in 2 different companies. They both take family insurance. I mean, you basically have duplicated coverage. Is that the case here, or is it simply we have 2 different systems, and it's not like we have dual coverage, but we have dual administration? There's no need to have two separate health systems.
Yeah, that's exactly right. In this case, you have 2 separate systems that serve the same potential population, and the people can be served in either case. What is unique, though, about this Defense Family Health System is in legislation they were given commercial provider status. So DOD cannot even get information from them on their costs, their profit margins, and administrative costs. They negotiate a fee every year with them. It takes about 8 months, according to DOD, so there's a lot of administrative costs, effort that goes into this. They have to keep separate data systems. And we believe, as we talk to the people who provide TRICARE managed coverage for across the United States, that they could easily take coverage over in this. So DOD would save all sorts of administrative millions of dollars in savings. And importantly, it's not integrated into the DOD system, in the fact that if you're in TRICARE, DOD can send you to a military hospital for treatment ahead of time. Not so with this separate system.
How many people are in that separate system?
It's about 130,000 people.
Okay. I do want to just, because my time's, it's always short. In terms of actually implementing your recommendations, again, I mean, 37% fully implemented, that's not bad. You know, 39% partially implemented. What prompts agencies to implement your recommendations? What are things that we could potentially do to get higher levels of implementation? I mean, what are the roadblocks? Yeah, well, first of all, I think a number of our recommendations require legislative action. All right, so I think more focused attention by the Congress can really help in this regard. And one of the barriers is that you have entrenched constituencies of these programs that have evolved over years, and so they're difficult to deal with, but they need more visibility over time. The agencies can be prompted to act by a wide variety of reasons, some of which, some of our recommendations have been consistent with things that they want to do over time, but they need legislative support, like I think the DOD healthcare system that we talked about. So the agencies also have initiatives underway. They're facing enormous budgetary pressures to bring down their costs, so some of our suggestions are welcome cover for them to reduce some of their costs over a period of time. The big barriers, though, and you see this in our statistics, for actions that require one agency to take action to reduce overlap and duplication, is a 40% take-up rate for fully addressed. Where multiple agencies have to act to address duplication or overlap across agencies, it's only 25% take-up. And this is where Congress and OMB come into play, and they need to take a more active role, and where the agencies have more parochial interest and don't have the authority. Like in this consumer protection area that I mentioned, because a number of these agencies are independent regulatory agencies, they're not subject to OMB regulatory review processes, and so OMB's reach is limited, and only the Congress can set this up. And we also found, anomalies in this area. Like, for example, the labeling of toy firearms and imitation firearms. The responsibility for that rests with the National Institute of Standards and Technology. I mean, it really doesn't make sense to have, it's a legacy of things that happened in the past, to have our scientists focus on that activity when the Consumer Product Safety Commission takes care of all other labeling for toys and other things and has presence where they're imported. So there's a lot of opportunity here to rectify things that have developed over the years that have just become generally accepted, and we sort of continue on. Well, certainly I want our staff to work with your agency to very specifically delineate what legislation needs to be passed, work with you in terms of exactly how to write the legislation. I don't know to what extent that you already have all that out, but let's really prioritize this. Let's get those specific pieces of legislation. Let's come up with, again, a very well-defined, delineated list, and let's start working on that.
We'll be happy to do so.
Thank you. Senator Carper. Of course, as you pointed out, there's a lot of dollars right there, and there's low-hanging fruit, so we'll certainly take that under advisement. Of course, you've got a subcommittee, too, that you can work on some of that. I appreciate Senator Langford and Senator Peters coming here. I announced early on we have a pretty important briefing coming up, and so I told Senator Booker he wanted to ask one question, but we were just running out of time, and in fairness, I really can't let you ask questions either. Fully encourage you to submit those questions for the record. I think we've all got a lot of questions because there's so much good work done by Mr. Dodaro and his office. So let me just conclude the hearing by thanking you, Mr. Dodaro, all of the members of your staff for doing great work. And this hearing record will remain open for 15 days until April 29th, 5 p.m. for the submission of statements and questions for the record. This hearing is adjourned.